Thank you for tuning in to another episode of my Veterans to Success podcast. You probably know by now, my mission is to help 1 million veterans and entrepreneur business owners achieve the dreams, goals, and aspirations they deserve. That is why I created the Veterans to Success podcast, because I get to interview guys, men and women, who want to share their fascinating stories with you about their time before, during and after their time in the military, so you can benefit and overcome your challenges. So sit back, relax, and get ready to be mesmerized, astounded, and entertained. Today, I'm really excited because I've got Paul Swain here with me today. And as you know, as usual, don't go into a big, massive introduction because we're going to unveil and you're going to unleash the wisdom that Paul's got. So, Paul, hello, thank you, and welcome to the show.
Hi, Joe. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure, bud. And so we'll dive straight in because I know we've had a good chat before we started, and you've got a pretty good idea how it's going to go. And I know you've got some brilliant information to share with our listeners. So first of all, I'd like to get a feel for where you were before you joined the military, what your situation was, and what sort of prompted you to join.
Yeah, well, I come from, I was brought up in Leicestershire in a working class background. So I've got 2 older brothers. But sport played a massive part in my life growing up. So I was really good at sport. So I played boxing so I was a boxer, played football to a high level. I used to play for Leicester boys and Aston Villa boys, basketball, golf, just you name it, anything to do with sport. I I excelled, to be fair, without blowing my own trumpet. And my oldest brother, he joined, growing up was, it wasn't plain sailing. I don't think it is for a lot of people. So, I won't go into too much detail, but, I was exposed to quite a lot of things that, have an impact on your life and stuff like that. But that's just the way it is for many families. So my oldest brother joined. He's 3 years older than me, and I was really close with him growing up. And so he just really sold it to me. He said, look, if you play sport, that's what you'll do lots of in the military. It wasn't, if I'm going to be completely honest, it wasn't really about the Queen and Country thing initially.
Right.
It was a bit more like, do you know what? I quite like the sound of being in tracksuit all day long. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he joined, and then 3 years later, I didn't really apply myself too well at school. I did okay, but 3 years later, or 4 years later, in fact, I just followed him in, and that was it. Really, it was all about the sport and getting to meet lots of people and get the travelling and things like that.
Right.
Back in the mid-90s.
Yeah. So what? The I'm your mother now sort of phrase from the training sergeant and the directive staff. So, what was your experience and when you joined? What was the process? How did you feel on that first day?
I mean, I was quite a shy kid growing up. I was quite introverted. Well, I was very popular, but I was introverted. But I was quite naive. I'd not really done anything that provided me with the skills to join the army. So I'd not done cadets. I didn't even know how to iron a shirt. Literally, right. That's how bad it was, really, which sounds a bit shocking. But so I was 17 as well, and I was a very young 17. I looked like a little boy. So I was quite shocked. I mean, when I got there, I was quite shocked. I mean, I expected it all to be kind of nurturing and, patting you on the back and, oh, well done. And this is how you iron a shirt, and this is how you clean your rifle, and great stuff. I just had a feeling. I don't know if it was the way my brother sold it to me. Probably not. I just had this feeling that it was going to be more nurturing and well done. But as soon as I got there, it's like, you get the fucking go, get your, and I was.
Did your brother work for the Army Career Centre or something?
No, he didn't. But, it wasn't really him. I think I just had, I was watching Soldier at the time. You see.
Right, okay, yeah, I remember.
Because that was really popular in the mid-90s, and you know, you just fantasize about it a little bit, don't you? Being in uniform and serving your country and all that. So I was quite shocked when it was just more about just getting ragged, you know, from day one, just getting absolutely hammered. And listen, you've got to get this stuff, you've got to get this in your head, and you've got to perform very quickly. So it was a shock to me, but I was very homesick. But you know, it didn't take long for me to get over it, I suppose.
So where did you do your training at, and who did you serve with?
So I served. It was at Winchester, St John Moore Barracks. I think it's still there, and it was only 10 weeks actually. Some people do a lot longer, but it was 10 intensive weeks. And I served with the 9th 12th Royal Lancers, which is a reconnaissance unit. So small tanks, gathering information, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And so what went on in your military career? So you leave training after what, 10 weeks? Yeah. Where did you go then?
I went straight to the regiment, and we were split up at the time. Squadrons were in different places, but I went to Lulworth on the south coast. So I went straight to C Squadron. My brother was there, so he sort of asked for me to come to the same squadron, and we were supporting the gunnery side of things. You know, the live firing with the tanks. So that was our job. But just going back quickly to basic training, Joe. One thing that always stood out for me was the character building side. And I remember on this exercise, it was an escape and evasion phase where you have to avoid capture, as you know, from the corporals. Yeah. And I got captured, I think, around about midnight, and a sandbag was placed over my head, and I was forced to the ground. And I couldn't see anything, obviously, and I had my helmet on at the time, but the sandbag was over my head. And then the next thing you know, I could feel the wheel of the Land Rover being driven over my head. Yeah. And I was like, what's going on here? Have they lost the plot? Is it, you know, I had no idea whether the corporals in charge had lost the plot. Obviously, it turns out it wasn't the actual Land Rover. You know, what they were doing, they were rolling the spare wheel over my head, and one of the other instructors were just revving in on the engine. But yeah, it was traumatizing.
Yeah, and how did that make? Because I mean, right, because I joined in '81, so I'm a bit older, right? Yeah. And I remember the stuff that they used to do with us, stress positions and some interesting stuff that would be well frowned upon now. And I suppose it's all about psychology. I remember one guy, we got him in a helicopter, and it was just hovering. But they'd been flying around, lost orientation, and it came to hovering near to the ground, and they were going to throw him out. So
stuff like that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, is it a good thing? I think it's good and bad. I mean, I think, you know, without being disrespectful, and I don't mean it in any way, but I think today's society, all of us really, to an extent, I think we've softened to an extent, if I'm allowed to say that. And I think
of course you are, yeah.
You know, and I think we have softened, you know, again, rightly or wrongly, I don't know, it's not for me to say, but it'd take a long conversation to work it out, what impact it's had on society. But back in your day, you know, people were just naturally tough. They had to be, you know, mentally stronger, I would say, physically, well, that's debatable, but physically stronger. So is it a good thing? Well, it plays a part, doesn't it? It builds you up. It is character building. It learns you to, you know, to be able to endure that suffering, and afterwards, you know, you come out the other side and you get on with it, and it provides and creates stories in your life. So, you know, there's no regrets for me having that done to me. It didn't. I say traumatic, but it didn't affect me like that, really.
On the plus side, though, you see. Because you know the phrase well. In peacetime we train for war, and in wartime we fight for peace, right?
Yeah.
So and I suppose it's about the more realistic you can be in training, or the closer you can to the real deal, then the better you're going to be prepared for when the stuff does hit the fan, aren't you?
Yeah.
And
I agree.
because we were talking about the difference between military life and civilian life now, and the different preparations and the way you psychologically prepare yourself. So thank you for sharing that. So you had the spur wheel. You didn't know it was a spur wheel at the time, and you were a bit traumatized. So then what happened? Because at the end of your training, you have the end of course party, or we call it something else in the military. So how did you get on with the DS staff then? Because it was like you've got through the first part.
Because it was done and dusted sort of thing. Yeah, it was okay. They were, it's weird. They kind of transition into normal, nice, genuine people, don't they?
Yeah.
Especially when your parents are there as well. But I was still very young. They were a bit older, but they were fine. I remember on the passing out parade afterwards, we had a few drinks, and they'd come up and they'd talk to you like normal people, and the respect was kind of instantly mutual. But it made you understand that that's the way they have to be in order to get you from a civvy to a soldier in such a short frame of time. And you're not quite there after 10 weeks, but it's you're getting there. They have to be the way they are. They have to be as harsh, because as you say, really what we're doing, the whole point of the military is you're training to go to war and defend your country. So it has to be the extremes in every case. But yeah, I mean, my corporal instructor at the time, he was a bit of a nightmare, to be honest. In fact, I think he actually got sacked from the job later on because he went a bit too far. But he was fine with me afterwards, after the passing out parade, and so were the other instructors and the sergeants. So there was never any hard feelings. I didn't go away thinking, any hatred or anything like that. In fact, I looked up to them as idols the whole time, despite whatever they did to me or the others, because you're all in it together, aren't you? That's the biggest thing.
How many, out of interest, how many of you started on the first day of basic training, and how many actually passed out? You got any idea?
I think it was around 50, and I think around 30 passed out, if I remember rightly. So quite a few dropped off through choice, and a few just did, they just couldn't cut it really, because, with all the want in the world, some people are just not. They're just not made for the army, for whatever reason. They're just not there. You have to have a certain mindset. I think you have to have a strength of mind, even if you don't believe you have a strength of mind. I think somewhere in you, as long as they can pull it out of you, you have to have a strength of mind over anything else. And physically fit, you've got to be physically fit. Some people weren't. They just weren't physically fit enough, and that was a massive part of it as well, which I loved. I love the fitness.
Yeah. And so now you've gone to the South Coast, and you're at your first posting. And so what's going on there? You're with your brother, and how long are you there for? And then how did your career progress?
So I was with my brother. I was there for about 18 months. So instantly I get into that, I wouldn't say competition. It's not competition. That's the wrong word. I don't know what word it is, but I wanted to perform. I wanted to work the way up my ranks. And because my brother was already a corporal, or a lance corporal, I think, and he was regarded as a blue-eyed boy pretty much. He was massive into sport himself and performing well as a soldier. So I think I already had that kind of a bit of pressure really to perform. But I wanted to, I had my own standards as well. So I progressed as quickly as I could. I was thrown onto courses as quickly as I could, gunnery courses, radio courses, driving and maintenance courses, and smart as a carrot all the time. One of the old sayings in the army: "Smart as a carrot."
Smart as a carrot. Yeah. Still use that now. Yeah.
But you know what? I've always said this, even to today. As long as you turn up at the right time, with the right kit in the army, you needed to be really smart. So boots shining, smart kit, notebook and pen or notebook and pencil, and you're prepared to learn and work hard, and you're enthusiastic and motivated. That is all you needed. You didn't really need anything else. As long as I turned up willing to help and do what was asked of me to the best of my ability, and I was as smart as a carrot, I was always on time, that was it. Sort of work, that was enough for me to go. Obviously you needed to have an understanding of the job, but that comes anyway with doing it on a daily basis. So it's really about your attitude towards being a soldier, which is most important, really. I think, anyway.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. So, right, you've been there for 18 months. So what year is it now?
So we're in 97 now. And then I move on to Norfolk, Swanton Morley, to an old RAF base. And then the regiment comes together then for the first time in a few years, actually. So there's 5 squadrons, A, B, C, D,
Right, okay.
and HQ, yeah. So I'd still not deployed on operations at this point.
Okay. What's it like to see all the squadrons come together? 5 squadrons.
It was good, but you know what? We was in a little bit of a comfort blanket down in Lulworth on the south coast. So
yeah,
we was just our own little entity. You know, there's not many there. So again, it was a bit nerve-wracking, really, because you're coming together with people you've not seen before, same cap badge, another 300, pretty much 300 soldiers. And one of the squadrons has actually been doing more military work, working, you know, specialising out in the field a lot, doing a lot of training exercises. So they're regarded a bit as elite compared to, you know, I'd not really done any field exercises. I've been in the regiment 18 months when all I'd done was really maintain the tanks and played sport. So coming together, it was a bit like, shit, I need to perform, really, because those boys over there, they're really good in the field. I'm clueless, I'm smart, but that's about all I've got. So, but it was exciting as well, do you know what I mean? Because that camaraderie came together, and we were finally a regiment again. You know, everyone's in the same cap badge, and we'd go down the local town into the pubs. And yeah, it was the first time when I really felt like, yeah, this is amazing. Like, I'm around all of my mates every day, and we've all got the same cap badge. We're all looking out for each other. It was brilliant, really. I loved it. Great days.
Yeah, and I know what you mean, because I was 2-4 Field Squadron, and we were part of a regiment. Well, we were based in the southeast, and we knew everything about combat engineering. I mean, because we worked with the field engineer wing, training the young officers, section commanders, and field sergeants. It was absolutely brilliant. But we did used to come together once a year to do regimental exercise, and then divisional exercise. So I know what you mean, and it was very competitive.
Yeah, so, that's the other thing. Yeah, in between squadrons, instantly competitive. So that's a really good point, actually. You pick up on that immediately. Like, we're all okay when we go out on the piss. We're all good with each other when we go out for a few beers, but on camp or in the field when we're exercising, military exercise, it's like, yeah, and you obviously have troop tests and things like that. So each squadron's going against each other, and that's like the World Cup for the regiment.
Yeah, and because it all starts, doesn't it, with your section competitions? If you're anything like us, then it moves out to troop, then it's squadron, then it's regiment, and then it really starts to get
and it's the same with sport, isn't it? You know, if you play sport, you play again. You know, I got into boxing, as I say. Our boxing and then we had the inter-squadron boxing competition, which had not been done for about 6 years, I think, 6-7 years. The last time was in Hereford before I joined in Germany. So that was, again, you know, and it's a massive event. You know, everything's laid on, and the lights, and the officers are all dressed up, and the sergeants are all dressed up in their best dress. So it's like your Tyson Fury at the Wembley. It's your own little thing. That's how it feels to you, sort of thing.
So you're now getting ready for exercise and actually starting to feeling a bit like a newborn soldier, I suppose, because you've been walking around a lot of recce kit, sports kit, and then all of a sudden you thought, wow, time to be a soldier. So what happens then?
Again, they're quite out of my depth, truthfully, at the beginning, you know, because I'd not done anything, but yeah, slowly ease into it. I started getting put on courses. I did my Carter course.
Right.
We went out to Canada, so the Carter course, the leadership course. I did okay on that, actually. I think I come about 5th out of about 40.
Oh, good lad, well done.
Did well, because you know a lot of the guys on there were 3, 4, 5 years older than me. You see, so I was getting pushed and thrusted quite early on, and I did more advanced courses, and then we went to Canada, and I really performed well out there as a gunner in a tank company. and that's the regiment going against different regiments and stuff in battle scenarios. And I was actually promoted on return, the day we returned, I was promoted to Lance Corporal. So
well done.
Yeah, cheers. Yeah, that was after, I think that was only 3 years. So in my regiment, that was pretty good.
That's flying that. And by the way, just in case you're listening and you don't understand what a carder is, that's the test on the leadership, as you mentioned, to see whether you're good enough to get your first strike.
Yeah. A bit like basic training, but a bit more advanced, because you're expected at this point to understand your stuff. So in this time as well, I'd boxed at the regiment, I'd boxed at the Army Novices, I'd played Army football. So, I was building my own little profile, really. There's ego does play a part, but at the end of the day, you're part of a team all the time. It sounds like I'm just talking about myself, but ultimately, you're in your troop. It's all about your troop. It's all about your squadron, and by that point, 3 years in, my military knowledge had advanced quite substantially. So I felt more confident in myself as a soldier. So I went on, it kind of went on from there, really.
Do you like coffee? A lot of people tend to spend money on expensive coffees from outlets without even thinking about it. Well, for the price of just 2 coffees per month, you can gain access to valuable business and life resources gained from my over 37 years in business and 15 years in the military. These world-class resources are designed to help you achieve the goals, dreams, and aspirations you deserve. So visit joeteams.com now to find out more. That's JOETEAMS.com to find out more. And thank you for that. What's motivating you now? I mean, you've got this rivalry, I suppose, with your brother. And I suppose on the basis of standing on the shoulder of giants, which we're talking about, then your brother's probably a giant to you, because you wanna like mirror what he's doing, or even better. And then I suppose as you're going up the ranks, you're starting to look like a bit of a giant to people below you, aren't you, who are younger and more inexperienced, maybe.
Yeah, that's it. It happens quickly as well. It's not long before you start really enhancing your knowledge. And I think my brother was always there in my head. I wasn't competing with him as such, because I was happy for him to go up the ranks. We were close, as I say, but I was always there thinking, what, he's made full corporal, so I need to get to that. So also, it's not only just about my brother. You've got your mates around you, and again, there's that rivalry as such, and that competition with your peer group. So there's always, I had one guy called Jim Knowles, and he was just immaculate. Everything about him, I think he was an RSM in the in the cadets. Yeah. So he joined the army already knowing all about his stuff. And he was immaculate in the regiment, and there was a little bit of competition there as well. Even though we were good mates and we were in the same troop, I think immediately I felt that, I need to be one step ahead, and I was a little bit more senior than him. So I managed to keep just above him throughout my career until I was medically discharged. But it's just, I think it was always, what brought it on. I think it's instilled in you, or it's in you anyway. I've always been competitive, even in the days back in playing the sport at school. So I think I just followed that on, that I wanted to perform, I wanted to do well. I didn't want to, I always feared making myself look like a fool. I suppose a lot of things were on external validation, I suppose, going a bit deep into it, growing up, So I never wanted to look a fool in front of anyone, especially people who are above me. So I was hell bent on understanding my job as best as I could. So I was a bit of a geek, you know what I mean? I'd get myself in my books, and even though I was going out all the time and I was popular with the lads and all the rest of it, but I needed to know everything, whatever it was, the chemical safety rule, the marksmanship principles, anything to do with military. I needed to know it verbatim so I could perform.
Yeah, and then because it becomes second nature. I remember at the School of Infantry, when I was there, even though I was an engineer, I was trained as one of the skillet arms instructors, and it just becomes second nature, doesn't it? You just got to know how to strip a weapon blindfolded or in the dark, you know, and all sorts of stuff. So, and I know what caliber of soldier you were, and in fact, I suppose you can take the man out of the army, you can't take the army out of the man. So you've still got it. So now you're really progressing through your ranks. So when do you get your full screw and then your third, and how's that looking?
Yeah, it's just whirlwind, really. I got my full screw. I went to the training depot. So I was an instructor. I was an instructor in weapons, map reading, physical training. Drill. You're learning how to teach the new soldiers how to march and handle the weapon and all that. So, yeah, and I deployed on operations in Kosovo, and then I deployed to Iraq as an acting sergeant, but I was a corporal at the time. But they promoted me as a sort of an acting sergeant because I was in charge of a troop at that point. So, like, I was acting as a troop sergeant for, 12 to 16 blokes. And it was our job out there to teach and mentor the Iraqi army. So just developing their skills. So that was massive responsibility. But again, I embraced it. I thrived it. I had good guys around me, and that's what really counts a lot of the time. You'll know this, Joe.
Yeah.
You can be great at your job, but if you've got absolute muppets around you, you're going to struggle. And I was fortunate. The blokes I had with me were spot on. So it just happened. Yeah. So I went from there, and then so senior rank, got into the mess. Obviously, when you get into the senior mess, it's very different. Then it's a massive transition because even just going for something to eat, when you're a corporal, it's hundreds of people on camp. At this point, we were based in Germany, you see, so there were different regiments. There were engineers and artillery. There's hundreds of people in this one cookhouse.
This is in Iraq, is it still?
No. This is. I was based in Germany then when I was promoted.
All right. Yeah. Got you. Yeah.
But I was saying, like, when you're not a sergeant, when you're a corporal, go into the cookhouse. There's hundreds of soldiers.
Yeah.
And you're serving yourself, aren't you? You're going up to the halfway, you're serving yourself. Yeah. When you get into the sergeant's mess, all of a sudden, there's people waiting on you, taking your orders. You have to make sure you turn up smartly dressed every evening to eat. And if the RSM, the regimental sergeant major, if he's present, you have to make sure that you greet him. Good evening, sir. Good evening, gents. And it's a definitive step up. So again, my brother was in the same mess as me. He was one rank higher. So it was good. It was great. Really, really good times, actually.
And I know that because I've analysed my army career, and when I've been speaking to great blokes like yourself and great women as well, the fact is, I know that people say about the transition from military to civvy street. Actually, the process you go through in the military is pretty much the same. You start off as the lowly sapper private, then you come up through the ranks, and as you progress, it's like be the same. There's a parallel. It's just that it's a micro market in the army because you see everything in such a small place, don't you?
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, and and it's the language as well. The language in the military is the way that we communicate. It's something that civvy street don't understand. It's one of the only things that they wouldn't understand. You could say to a civilian, you understand Google, you understand Microsoft, but they wouldn't really understand anything to do with the military unless they've been exposed to it. So I think because you are, as you say, honed in on that micro, and you're all the same, you've all got the same language. The biggest hurdle, I think, leaving is trying to communicate in civvy speak, if you like, but still maintaining your standards and discipline and skills that you've acquired throughout the military. The leadership skills, the management skills, everything that you've picked up over the years. Transitioning, trying to bring that into civilian world. That's the tough thing, I think.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So you've gone from training, and you've already seen a transition from how a full screw corporal speaks to you when you're a recruit, and then all of a sudden you pass out, and then it becomes instantly different. Then going to your first posting, second posting, baptism by fire, Kosovo, and then Iraq. Then you go to Germany, and now you're serving in the mess. Where do you go next?
So, serving in mess. I did a short stint as a recruiter on the high street, recruiting for the army. So that was in Chesterfield, 2 years. That was as a sergeant. Again, good job, but that was my first interaction really with civvies, if you like. After what we're talking 14 years at that point. You know, I'd been sheltered, almost wrapped up in cotton wool. Even though we're tough fighting soldiers, you know, you're on camp, you're inside the barbed wire all the time. As I say, speaking the same language, understanding the blokes to your left and right. So now I'm on the high street in a shop, and civilians are walking in, wanting to join the army, and their parents are walking in as well. So it took a bit of. I mean, I think that my people skills were pretty good, to be fair. So I was able to pick it up quite quickly. But again, the language, you have to be careful how you speak to, you know, civilians that are looking to join. You have to be very careful how you speak to the parents. So again, it's developing these skills. But because you've been exposed to so much in the army, you know, I've been exposed to talking to Kosovans, people in Iraq, you learn to adapt fairly quickly. You know, you learn to, okay, I've got to tone it down a little bit now. I don't need to be this full-on screaming sergeant. I need to understand where they are in life and see if I can work with it. And I did. So yeah, did really well actually.
Yeah, because you're like the shop window for the military, aren't you?
Yeah.
So you've got to be smart as a carrot. Crease is razor sharp. Boots balled up, or at least highly shined. Your beret clean, like impeccably clean and brushed. So yeah. So
it's
how proud did that make you feel, being the shop window?
Yeah, immensely proud. And the thing is, again, there's competition, because I've got a sergeant in the Royal Logistic Corps. I've got an infantry. I've got the office managers and infantry, as well as a warrant officer class 2, a sergeant major, if you like, equivalent. So we're all trying to recruit. We're supposed to recruit for the bigger army. But the truth is, my commanding officer is saying, you recruit for 12 Lancers, you know, and his commanding officer saying, you recruit for us. And so even in the office, we've got this little competition going on, and you've got a board, you know, you've got a board with cards for how many you've recruited. So yeah, you've got, like I say, you've got to turn up looking smarter than the bloke to your left and right, and you've got to sell yourself, even though it's about them joining. You've got to sell yourself. So these people walking through the door go, oh, I like the look of him. I like what he's doing. I love his cap badge. And so, yeah, it's
So it's like you got KPIs, key performance indicators, haven't you? You got sales targets. You got to hit this. I mean, a sale is getting someone in to your regiment, right?
True. And you know what? I'll be honest. You have to have a word with yourself as well, because square peg, round hole. It's not all about numbers. And there was a time when, you know, I was still, how old was I? Probably 31. You know, so I'm not very old. But there was a time when the competition got a bit too much, and people, you know, we was thinking, just get blokes in. That's it. Just get them in. And that's the wrong thing to do. So, you know, we had to sort of have a word with myself and say, you know, you've got to make sure that this person, you've got to do the best by that individual. You know, it might be a young 16-year-old walking in, you know, and they might want to become a skilled engineer like yourself. And, you know, there might be the infantry soldier next to me going, get him in infantry. And that's wrong, morally wrong. So, you know, you've got to make sure that you're doing the right thing as well. Even though you're trying to recruit for your regiment, you've got to make sure that you're picking the right people that are going to fit that hole as well.
And I suppose that's why, I mean, I don't know your route in, from the Army Career Centre in Liverpool, then I went to Sutton Coldfield for a few days. That was interesting. I thought it was just good. The brochure never said what I had to do. The brochure just said it was all great. until I got to Sutton Coldfield and they did physical tests and psychometric tests. So then I suppose that also gave a good indication of where you should be signposted to as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, they did a little selection phase in Lichfield. It was, which I think is quite close to Sutton Coldfield.
Yeah.
And again, yeah, and ultimately it was down to them, and it depends on what score they was achieving and their touch test and all the rest of it. But like you say, that's the place where the corporals and sergeants at the selection process would really wean out or put people into the right place. And yeah, I remember doing it myself, and it was a shell shock. It was actually probably more of a shock. I didn't want to join actually after I'd done the 2-day Lichfield.
Right, okay.
I think I was 16. I actually come back and I delayed it for about 10 months joining because it was just a shock to the system. Again, I expected to go to this 2-day selection process and be treated really well and be spoken to really well. I don't know where I got this from, but they're like, you fucking stand over there, you stand there, right, mile and a half, go. And it was all just a complete shell shock. And I was a young 16-year-old, and you've got blokes that could join up to 27, I think, then, or 29. So I'm with 29-year-olds. Obviously, we're going backtracking a bit here, but yeah, massive shell shock, but really important that you join. I suppose it's like recruiting, isn't it? Or what? I can't remember the job in civilian world where you're putting the right person into the right post. It's really, really important. I think I got the right job. But yeah, it was a shell shock, massive shell shock, that 2-day selection phase. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I do remember it well. So I know you mentioned that you went back in time there, but it's interesting because it shows what formulates you as the person you are now. So you've been a recruiter now, which, by the way, if you're listening and you don't appreciate how important a recruiter is, right? The army has, and the military, because the Navy, Air Force, have to recruit. So they put top guys in there because they're the shop windows. So congratulations on being at that. So now you're at the pinnacle of that part of your career. What happens next?
So then I go back to Germany after 2-year post, immediately promoted to staff sergeant. And literally the reason I go back is because we're deploying to Afghanistan as a regiment for the first time. And I was going to be the squadron quartermaster sergeant. So essentially looking after stores, issuing kit, issuing weapons, issuing rations, specialist equipment. A really high profile job, as you know, Joe, in the regiment. You've got a lot of responsibility. You've got millions of pounds of equipment on your signature, which you're signing out to the guys. But because this was the first really serious, that's a crazy thing to say, but the first really serious deployment. Kosovo was serious, obviously. Iraq was serious, but this was on a different level. People were dying, people were being injured on a weekly basis. The reason I know it was so serious, and I actually, it's quite tough to say it sometimes when I bring it up, but before deployment, I was still a singly, so I was still in the mess. I wasn't married. Right. I literally had to write my own funeral arrangements. Yeah. So I had to give my paperwork into my sergeant major, who's only one rank above me. What songs I want at my funeral, what I want to happen. I had to box up my room entirely, put it all into boxes, in case I never returned. So, if I never returned, the job had been done. My room was packed up and my boxes could be shipped back home. So, and I also had to write last letters to the people close to me. So even though I was a staff sergeant at that point, I was a leader of men, it was tough because I remember locking my door and writing my last letters and thinking, Jesus Christ, this is real. This is real. And obviously that's tough. That's a tough thing to do. You're writing your last letter to your mum, your dad, and your brothers in case you never return. So the training was obviously arduous building up to it. So I knew this was really serious, really serious.
And that sort of brings it home then, doesn't it? That it might be a one-way ticket.
It does, yeah. And you know, I don't think anyone can say they're not apprehensive. I mean, there were some soldiers that are just gun-ho, they want to get out there and ultra keen. But if you really, you know, sat them down and said, be honest, tell me to my face, you're not apprehensive. I think everyone, I mean, even when we got to the airport before leaving in Germany, Hanover, there was still banter, because there's always banter. No matter what soldiers do, they could be in the hardest, shittiest place on the planet. There's still that banter between squaddies. But even then, there was a little bit of a dulled down atmosphere, because we knew, you know, when we get there, I don't know what the flight time was. When we get there, we're hitting the ground running, and this is real. So yeah, I don't think you can ever train for that. Well, you can, you mentally prepared, but it was a bit more of a shit. I might not come back home now.
Yeah, well, that's the calm before the storm, isn't it? Because I mean, when you hit the ground running, that's when I mean, even before you touch down in the carrier, the plane, whatever, the adrenaline's starting to go, because you know that as soon as that door opens, that's it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, because we were in uniform, obviously. We was on a civvy plane, if you like. But then you transition to a military plane, to a Chinook. I think Chinook. No, it might have been something. Yeah, probably, or Hercules. And I remember, before you get within a certain amount of distance to the place that you're going to, you know, Helmand province, in my case, all the lights go out in the aircraft.
Right, okay, yeah.
So you literally, you know, because in case there's an air threat, so you can imagine, you know, you're in this aircraft, you're kind of looking at each other in silence. No one's talking. Obviously, you've got your ear defenders in, you've got your helmet on, chin strap done up, weapon. And then the lights go out, and you're thinking, Jesus Christ, this is real. But, you know, as we do, you just sort of get on with it, don't you? And you just mentally switch your brain and get on with it.
So you're in charge of all this kit, right? And it's a lot of kit, and it's a lot of money. So how are you feeling at this point?
I'm feeling pretty good, because I'm feeling confident in my abilities, but the post as an SQMS was new to me, and it was quite overwhelming at times, because you're dealing with so much. I mean, as a 33-year-old or 32-year-old, 33, it's a lot to take on. You know, you're talking people that are really senior management level, I think, would be doing this kind of thing. But as I say, I knew my stuff. I knew that I was going to be with my squadron. That's all I needed to do, was get set up. So I needed to get set up, get my kit in place, sign for it, make sure I've got a system in place, that I know where everything is, you know, because obviously everything's registered, everything's serial numbered. You're talking about weapons, specialist equipment. So I just wanted to get in there, find my feet, get to a point where I was happy, you know, with my own little system, and then I could crack on then and support the guys, because that was my job. It wasn't about me. It was about me providing support for the guys on the ground. But things changed. Things changed, and I went to do another job.
Have you ever wondered what is going to happen to all your knowledge, wisdom, and skills when you die? Yeah, me too. That is exactly the reason why I created JoeTeam.com, so I can leave a legacy for my children and for other successful people who are just like you. For less than 40 pence per day, you get access to valuable business and life resources gained from my over 37 years in business and 15 years in the military. These world-class resources are designed to help you achieve the goals, dreams, and aspirations you deserve. So visit joeteams.com now to find out more. That's JOETEAMS.com, joeteams.com to find out more. So you went from SQMS to another job. What was the other job?
Yeah, what it was, one of the guys, an old injury played up with one of the guys on the ground teaching the Afghan army, and so he had to come back to replace me, and I went out to take his job in one of the outposts, one of the control posts, the patrol bases. So I remember being told about that as well, because again, you know, I'd sort of bedded in, found my feet as an SQMS. And to be fair, I was in a relatively safe area. I'm not saying that I was shying away from going out on the ground. That's not the case. I was very happy to go out on the ground if needed. But ultimately, I'd been in this place for several weeks, and you know what it's like when you're somewhere for several weeks. You find your feet, you get your little comfort bubble around you, even as a soldier. And then overnight, I'm packing all of my kit into my Bergen, and I'm off to a patrol base where they're going out on patrol and getting, well, potentially shot at or blown up. And that happened literally overnight, pretty much. I mean, I got told on the morning, I think the next evening, I was flying out to this patrol base.
So that, like, psychologically then, when you just got into the routine of being the SQMS and sorting all the kit out for the boats, then all of a sudden being told with because the injury of your mate wasn't expected. So swapping roles was like a bit of a shitstorm then, really, wasn't it?
It was really. I mean, I'd like to sit here and say, oh, I was dead keen. I wanted to get out there. I wanted to be out there on the ground. But truthfully, that wasn't the case. You know, I was, as I say, I was comfortable where I was, and I'd done previous tours, and I knew the threat was there. So as much as I wanted to support and be with my mates, I was happy where I was, to be fair. And I knew I was going to have to go out on the ground anyway, because I'd have to replenish supplies to the guys. So yeah, it was a shock to the system, and the fact that I was literally packing overnight, you know, it was a bit like, shit, you know, here's the next step up. You know, I knew it was real with the deployment, found my comfort zone. Now I'm going out to the guys. So yeah.
So you go out to train. Is this training Afghans, and you've got a team of Brits, our soldiers under you, and you're the head of that team?
Yeah, pretty much. Well, actually, it used to be like that, but when I got there, it was just myself and a captain.
All right, okay.
But it was more of a mentoring role. Before, a couple of years previous, it was teaching. So they'd lead, the soldiers would lead patrols, as if the British soldiers would lead. It wasn't like that now. All we would do was mentor. So we'd stay to the rear of patrols, and then back on the base, the patrol base, I might take map reading lessons or patrol skill lessons and stuff like that. But ultimately, it was our job to observe and mentor the Afghani army. But obviously we were still on the ground, and it was still pretty hairy being on the ground. So I loved it though. I mean, I remember I was apprehensive, but I got posted or flown out to the Marines. I was attached to the Marines.
All right, okay.
I was with K Company of the Marines. I wasn't actually going out on patrol with them. I was going out with an infantry unit in the army, but the base that I was at was Marines. And you know, I don't know if you've had much. I'm sure you've had a little bit to do with the Marines in your time, Joe. But you know, I have to blow their trumpet a bit. They're pretty impressive. You know, they're intelligent guys, pretty much, and everything's clean. You know, they had the camp was spot on. You know, everything had its place, and everything was tidy and clean, and they were good blokes, and they were into the fitness. So straight away, I was loving it. And when I was back on the patrol base, I was working hard in the gym. The food was amazing because we had 2 trained chefs there, so we were getting great food. Obviously, we were sleeping in tents, and we was, you know, for want of putting it another way, we were shitting in holes. You know, that's the way it was. It was, you know,
it's not like an ensuite, is it? You know,
no. I mean, we were sleeping on cot beds in sleeping bags, and we were having showers from solar showers. You know, warming the heat up in this bag. They're warming the water up in this bag, and everything was in tents. The cookhouse was in a tent, and you know, there was a threat from outside. You know, we would obviously built up the side with all the protection, which the engineers would have come in and done a lot earlier on. But there was still a threat. But it was just, I really got on well with the Marine lads. So I was happy with the change. Actually, I was very happy with the change from SQMS to this job.
Yeah, because I suppose, with all due respect to you as an SQMS, and if there's any other SQMSs listening, I mean, I suppose you could be accused of being a tea waller where you're drinking cups of tea. And I mean, I suppose in Afghan it's a bit different than being in a regimental headquarters back in the UK. But yeah, so, and then all of a sudden being in the thick of it with Marines, I mean, that's a next step up, isn't it, really?
Yeah, It is. Yeah, you're right. I mean, even though it was Afghanistan, an Esquimess is still pretty much regarded as well, I don't know, like you say, a bit of a lazy arse, but they're not. They've got a hell of a. To be honest, I felt the responsibility drop, if I'm going to be honest, when I went out to the patrol base, because the SQMS, I'm dealing with 1,000 things. Here, I'm dealing with the Afghan army. That is it. Making sure that we go out and patrol, they operate efficiently and professionally, and we come back safely. I need to know where we're going.
Yeah.
What time we're going out, what we're doing, and then we come back. And when you get back, there's no checking stores, there's no issuing more kit, there's no, literally you get back, you eat, you chill out, you do some gym work, and then you're done. So for me, I was loving it.
Yeah, so that was, and actually, just before I leave the role of SQMS, I know that the SQMS in the Royal Engineers is really important, because we've got to have kit that works, especially in bomb disposal. So, I mean, it's a big responsibility.
Massive job. Massive job. Yeah. I think it's probably I'd say it's arguably top 5 hardest in my regiment. I mean, I think the one up, the QM tech, the quartermaster, who's the officer, one up is difficult, but an SQMS is, it's pretty mammoth.
Yeah, definitely. So now you're being a mentor to the Afghans with the captain you're working alongside, and I've got a pretty good idea what demands that will put up on you. And again, you've got key performance indicators, because the performance of the Afghans is down to you.
Yeah.
Because there's nowhere to hide. I mean, their results reflect how good you are.
Definitely, yeah. And there's only 2 of you.
Yeah.
There's you and a captain. So everything from military skills, patrolling, tactical situation, map reading. Obviously, and you've got the language barrier. So all of this, I've got an interpreter, a translator, translating it for me. And the truth be known, they're a different breed to us. So we're used to, being in a lesson, listening with intent, making sure that we learn and then applying that. The Afghan army way of life was very different. I'd be taking a lesson and 3 of them would get up and walk out because they're not interested or whatever it may be. So it's really tough. You have to take that on board. I mean, thankfully, I had a brilliant captain with me. I mean, a brilliant captain. He was, he went on to go for special forces, and he was just good all round. He was brilliant. So we had a good relationship, and he was able to. I mean, he took on a lot. He took on all the tactical side of things and things like that. I did some of the map reading, and we trained together. We did a lot of fitness together. But it's tough. But as you say, when they go out and patrol, ultimately, how they perform is down to you pretty much, because their own skills prior to being taught by yourself are pretty minimal, really. The kit's different. They all look like, a lot of them anyway, look like a bag of shit, to be fair. And you're trying to change all this so they're able to deal with the situations themselves, and we can go home.
And so how, knowing your history and your pedigree and how you come, how do you deal with a bag of shit when they sat in front of you and you're thinking, what are you thinking? How am I going to train these? What?
I mean, there's 2 trains of thought. I think one of them is, if they can't be asked, I can't be asked. But then the military professionalism kicks in, and you don't allow yourself to do that. And so it's like going back to basic training. I mean, turning up 117-year-olds when I was at Harrogate teaching the junior soldiers, turning up like a bag of shit. They're not. Some of them not even. Even though they're told to turn. Even though they're told to turn up in shirt and tie, some of them, even then, they've not got an iron shirt. They've got a shitty tie, and food stuff. It's kind of the same. You're kind of doing it, but you're applying it to the army. So you have to just go back to base level, and that's, I think, that one of the big sayings in the military is keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
So you just have to talk about the basis of making sure that the kit, they prepare the kit before they go out on the patrol. They check it, they double check it. Their way they present themselves will make a difference to how people perceive them and see them on the ground. You know, making sure that they rehearse their patrol skills, and if anything happens on the ground, actions on, how do they respond to, you know, a threat of an IED? And it's really about going back down to the real basics and just working up from there. But it's tough, you know. I'm not going to lie and say at the end of it they were immaculate soldiers, but we've seen an improvement, and that's all you can ask for, really, in that short period of time.
So how long were you with them, and what happened during the tour with them?
So I was only with them for about 10 weeks, I think, 2 months, 10 weeks.
Right.
Because obviously I was injured. But yeah, I went on several patrols, several operations, which were, you know, more than 1 day operations. I mean, I remember the first patrol I went on. Jesus, we got dropped off in the middle of nowhere by aircraft, a helicopter, and the equipment we carried out there was ridiculous. I mean, nothing like I'd experienced before. Iraq, totally different. Kosovo, I mean, in Kosovo at times I think most of the time we were patrolling in berets. So here, you know, you're full of kit, body armor, all the kit in your back, spare ammunition, grenades, you name it. You know, when you go down to one knee to create a low profile on the ground, when you go static, it's kind of hard to pick yourself back up off your knee. That's how heavy the kit was. So I remember coming back after this 12, 15-hour patrol. Oh, I was in absolute bits. I remember looking at my body and it was just red raw. So I'm trying to look after myself at the same time. You know, it's hard enough for me to, you know, in 40 degrees heat, it's hard enough for me to look after myself. But again, you adapt, you get used to it. And, you know, we started to see improvements in their patrolling skills. And that's all you can do, really, is just little bit by bit.
Yeah. So what happened? What brought the tour with them to an end?
Yeah. So I, on this one particular patrol, a 10-day operation, just before we went out, just before we went to deploy on it, we was in a compound, a large compound, which is basically a large area surrounded by muddy walls for safety. And my brother was there at the time. It was the first time I'd seen him since getting flown out to the patrol base. He was also doing the same job in a different patrol base, but acting as a W02, a sergeant major, if you like, so a little bit different.
Right.
And I was with him that evening, and I think there was a film crew there, and they realised two brothers were in the same place, so they interviewed us. And in the morning, they filmed me get all of my kit together, and they watched me just patrol to the corner of the compound and then out of sight. And obviously, they couldn't go any further. Anyway, that day, I don't really remember much of it, Joe, but we approached a compound which we needed to enter, and it was my job, apparently, to provide outer security while some of the guys go in and clear this compound. And I'm told that what happened was my translator went and sat down by a lone tree to get some shade. And you're not really supposed to go out of any safe zone, you know, when you're patrolling, you're metal detecting and you're marking it with siloons at night or talcum powder in the day, as you know. And he'd stepped out of it and apparently pre-initiated a bomb in the ground. I don't know the ins and outs of it because I wasn't with the team, my own regiment. And I went over to him to get him back to the safe zone. And as he stood up, the device went off, killed him outright, and, you know, did its damage to me, which resulted in, I can't remember it really, but I mean, they thought I was dead. When the medics got to me, they thought I was dead because I was just, you know, just out of it. But I lost my left arm in the blast, and I fractured my hip and broke my ribs, and I had some internal organ damage. Obviously, I didn't know this at the time, and they didn't. But but apparently, my only words at the time were, "Give me more morphine," because I was obviously in excruciating pain. I could feel it, but I can't recall it. And loosen the tourniquet. So they put the tourniquet onto my arm to stop the bleeding. Yeah. As you'll know, and they'll just keep tightening it tighten it, up until the point that it stops the bleeding as far as it needs to go. So I remember saying, loosen the tourniquet, and then the air team got to me, the medics got to me, and then they pumped me full of ketamine, and I was out of it then, and I was flown back to Camp Bastion.
And once the medics get there and pump you full of ketamine, that's the first part, from my experience anyway. How do you feel that that's the first part of it, of relief, or thinking, I'm a bit safe?
Yeah, I think, again, I can't recall it too well, but I think I remember that feeling, because I think when I was on the ground and I was lying there, I was thinking, I'm dead. You know, I'm definitely gone now. And they're going, you know, you're all right. And the immense pain in my arm and stuff, I can kind of feel it. And I think my lips were blown up, really swollen.
Yeah.
And I was bleeding. I think I was bleeding out the ears or whatever. But yeah, when the ketamine hits you, it's like bliss, isn't it? It's like a wave. It's like a wave of relief that works its way down your body. And then that's it then. But then I'm out then. I'm gone. And I was gone then for about another 10 days.
By the way, mate, hats off to you, because when that translator if it was a pressure release device, as soon as you realised he'd pre-initiated it, he'd put his foot on it, and you went out to help him. I mean, apart from being, I don't know whether to call you daft or brave, or a bit of both.
Well, truthfully, Joe, I didn't actually know what it was. I thought, look, he's out in the safe zone. I need to get him back. As far as I remember, anyway. The truth be known, I don't 100% know my thought process at that time, but this is what I'm told by the team on the ground. So I don't class myself by any stretch as a hero. Never have done. I was just unlucky. I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, or lucky, if you like, because I'm alive and I'm here talking to you, telling the story. But so but unfortunately for him, he was gone in the blast.
And that's a great metaphor, if you like, sad though it may be, to recognise your limits and make sure you work within your limits and do what you're told to do, rather than just stray. Because I mean, that put 2 lives at risk, and sadly he became a cropper and you got injured. So now you've been whisked away. I take it you were casevac in a heli, were you?
Yeah, heli to Camp Bastion, and then I think a day later, some surgery was undertaken at Camp Bastion, and then a day later, I was flown back private aircraft to Birmingham, and my brother was actually on the same flight. So that must have been shocking for him, really, because I think there was just the nursing staff, me completely out of it, gone, and him. So yeah, that was pretty shocking.
Did it was that a coincidence that he was on that city flight, or did they arrange it so he could come back with you?
They arranged it,
right? Yeah. So you went to Selly Oaks then, did you?
Close to Selly Oak. Selly Oak was almost closing down for the soldiers.
Right, okay.
So I went to QE. So yeah, he would have been on the ground at the time when I was injured. But obviously, you wait for your ZAP numbers, don't you? Obviously, people won't listening in might not know what your ZAP number is, but it's the first 2 letters of your surname followed by the last 4 numbers of your army number.
Yeah.
So once that came through on the radio that my ZAP number, I'd been injured, I suppose he was informed immediately, and then he was taken to Camp Bastion, and then we were both flown back to QE.
So he must have been gutted then, and yeah. So I mean, this was pretty quick the day after. So were you? I would imagine you're still drugged up, are you, or have you got any idea what's going on?
Nothing. I mean, like I say, it must have been really tough for him. But he had to put on a brave face and front the family. I mean, to an extent, it's harder for him and the family than it is for me in a way, because I'm under medication. I'm gone. I don't know what's going on at this stage. But apparently, I was coming out of the induced coma, and because the ketamine was taking effect, it was shocking, because I was thinking like the nurses were trying to kill me and people trying to take me back to Afghanistan, and I was losing it and going crazy, and that to induce me back into a coma. And this went on for several days. I think I was actually on life support for, I think, a week or so. And then I started to come round slowly, and I didn't know I'd lost my arm at that point.
Right. So you've thinking that the nurses are going to kill you, and you don't know whether you can trust anyone. Is your brother still with you at this point?
Yeah. He stayed for a couple of weeks actually. He's pretty much by my side at the bed, and obviously my other brother found out and devastated family, and my other brother was there as well, and but I'm still out of it pretty much.
Yeah,
and then I start slowly coming round.
And you're not trusting many people, and you're still drugged. You don't know that you've lost your arm yet, or you've had the other injuries. At what point were you told?
My mum actually told me, because I thought it was my legs, because you're still heavily drugged up. I was conscious and I could communicate, but I was still out of it. And I must have said, "It's my legs, isn't it?" And do you know what though? I will say this; it's quite funny. Two of the things that I brought up immediately when I could speak was, one, is my face okay? How bad is that? and two, have I lost?
Yeah. Well, I thought I had a good idea that was going to be one of them. Have you lost your private parts?
Yeah. So, but how vain is that? I get some stick for that, but no. So I said to my mum, "I think it's my legs," and she went, "It's not. It's your arm." And I remember looking down, because I was a DJ as well. I know you're a DJ as well, Joe. And
yeah.
I remember looking down, and you're covered in white sheets, I think. And yeah, I just devastated, really. Just thinking, I've gone from being at the top of my game, staff sergeant, blue-eyed boy, ego being boosted every day, whether ego is a good thing or bad thing, that's for another conversation, to literally in bed in absolute tatters. Like I say, I had a collapsed lung, my liver or my kidney had some damage, and fractured hip, broken ribs, broken tibia, all under my arm had been taken away, blown away.
Yeah.
And just very, very tough to take, but I'm still drugged up, so I'm kind of dealing with it. But when everyone goes home and leaves you alone, it's tough.
So the left side of you took a hammering then from the blast.
Massive, yeah.
Just out of interest for me, because I understand, I appreciate about injury and how you're going to deal with it and what am I going to do. When you discovered it was your arm that you'd lost, or partial, and realized that it wasn't your legs or your private parts, and your face was all right, how did that, what sort of struggle internally was going on then?
Oh, I mean, you're trying to work out what can you do now. I mean, because I couldn't handle a weapon. I was a weapons specialist. I couldn't DJ, or at the time I didn't think I could DJ.
Yeah.
I was boxer. I was all these things, and so I'm trying to. Your brain's going at 100 miles an hour, thinking, I'm still a motivated person. I'm still enthusiastic. I still want to recover. Human wants to survive and go and move on. And I still had all of those things in me, the resilience, but I'm struggling to see what part I can play in life, really.
Yeah.
And that's the truth. That's kind of the struggle. That's been the struggle for several years, really, is where's your place in life after being a soldier. But you just keep working at it, don't you? And you keep trying to find your fit and see where it takes you.
Exactly. Thank you so much for sharing this part of your journey, because I recognize what a struggle it can be, certainly. And that's and that's why I love having heart to hearts like this, because it's really good to get a feel of how you deal with it, because it's great how you just get through it. So So you're in Birmingham. You got your family around you. Your mum's told you it's your arm after you recognise that, hey, my face is still intact and I've still got my private parts. So that's on the plus. So what's happening now? Because I suppose you got to have, once you start coming around, there's that recognition that maybe my army career is not going to go on much longer.
Yeah, there is that. I mean, that was in the forefront of my mind. I mean, I was still a soldier in my eyes. I mean, I used to have to shave every day, even though I couldn't move. I mean, I didn't move for 6 weeks. Literally, I didn't move. You know, the nurses would turn me over, and you'll understand all of this, Joe. You've been there yourself. You know, the nurses turned me over to go to the toilet and wash me, and you know, I had bed sores all over the place, and I think I had about 25 operations because of all the infections, of all the crap that are thrown in bombs. But that side, you know, I'm thinking, yeah, it's really tough knowing where I'm going to go, because that's all I knew, really. I did a little bit of civvy work before I joined. I did a bit of labouring for a brickie, but I was just a soldier through and through. And you know, some of the soldiers from my regiment were visiting me. I mean, obviously they were deployed, but some that were back on leave or whatever, they'd come and visit me, and the banter was still there, and that was great. But I was slowly thinking, I'm not going to be any part of that soon. And so where do I go? And it took me a long time to really work out what I was going to do. And, you know, as I say, arguably you could say, you know, there's still that uncertainty even sitting here today, truthfully. But, you know, I decided that I used to play a lot of golf, and I got introduced to 2 golfing organisations I went to So I went to the rehabilitation centre. So I got up on my feet after 8 weeks. I think it was 8 weeks. I left the hospital. Couldn't walk for it very well, but I managed to start getting strength back in my legs. I then went to Headley Court, which is the rehabilitation centre in Surrey.
Yeah.
And again, I'm still a soldier, and I'm still motivated. I'm still shaving every day. I'm still getting up early hours. I'm still a staff sergeant. So even though I'm not wearing uniform, I'm around soldiers that might be more junior to me, you know, privates, troopers.
Yeah.
You know, I'm one of the senior soldiers in that rehabilitation centre, really, because most of the soldiers that are injured are much junior.
Yeah.
So really, I've still got that hat on. I'm not really leading men, but I've got that hat on that I need to lead by example. You know, I need to put me. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. You say you're not really leading men, but flipping that, mate, I bet you were.
Yeah, well, actually, it's a good point, because I remember a couple of people have said to me, you know, you were just all over it. Like you was at all the PTs, because it's mostly PT. If it's not physiotherapy or occupational therapy, like what you're going to do, or working with prosthetics, it's mostly you're getting beasted.
Yeah, yeah.
Literally, you're getting beasted, even though you people are there with limbs missing, but that, you know, the PTI is beasting you. So I remember, you know, I was still there 5 minutes before. I was still putting in 100% effort, even if I couldn't do the exercises properly. When everyone had a break afterwards, or most people, I'd stay behind and still do what I could. And people were seeing this, and you know, I remember a few people saying it inspired them to work harder in the rehabilitation centre and to thrive and move forward. So that was good to know, actually.
And I totally get it, because after my injury, I hope you don't mind me sharing this with you. It's just that I think there's a lot of parallels. And I was at Southport Spinal Unit because I did my neck, didn't I? Quite seriously, and I was paralysed. But then I started getting movement back, and the gym would be allocated for certain people, and I'd see them lying in the bed, and I said to the nurse, "Who's going down there to take or in the swimming pool to walk?" Because obviously you're weightless in the pool, aren't you? So it meant I could sort of have a go at walking, well, if you could call it that. And the nurse, they said, "What do you mean?" I said, "I want the position. I'm going down there. Get me down there now." Because I said, "What happens if they don't take it?" I said, "Well, it'll be lost." I said, "Well, right, get me there."
Fair play to you. I mean, it's like anything. Even in the military, you get the people that are, let's be honest, you get the people that are lazy and try to avoid working hard, and they tend to not work their way up the ranks, don't they?
Yeah.
And it was the same really in the rehabilitation centre. Is that, yeah, people just wanted to do the bare minimum and get by, and I was like, no, sod that. I want to get as fit as I can as quickly as possible because I want out of it. I want to move forward. I want to, pursue a new career. I want to, I want to inspire people to feel that or know that even though, you've suffered a horrendous injury, there's still life after that injury. And that's where I was, and that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah. And by the way, they want to stay lazy, not do the work, and then expect to get the same brilliant results that you do.
That's exactly it. Yeah, and so it happens. A lot of them stayed there I was there on and off for a year, so it wasn't really long considering you go home for as much time as you're there. If you're there for 4 weeks, then you go home for 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So actually, my turnaround, considering my injuries, was really quick because I was, as I say, I was determined. I wanted to get out of there. I didn't want to sit on my laurels, and I could have stayed there for 3 years. I could have said, I'm still hurting. This is going on, and I still had physical pain, which I do today. But I could have just played on that. But I wanted to move forward with my life, and that was the plan, and and that's what I did.
So now I suppose you're going to have a word with the chief clerk or your 2IC or the OC or your sergeant major, having a chat in the mess. So what's going on now about the future?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't return to the regiment for a long time actually, but they came back to Leicestershire when they finished in Afghanistan to parade through the streets of Leicestershire, and I was there for that, and that was tough because they were in, I think they had the medals at that point. Yeah, I think they did. They had their Afghanistan medals. I think I probably had it, but it was in a box. I don't think did I wear my medals that day? I might have actually. I can't remember, to be honest. But I was proud of the regiment marching through the streets, and my brother was on that parade. But at the same time, it was tough to see because I should have been part of that parade as an SQMS or a staff sergeant, and it hit home really. That was it. You know what I mean? That was it. That was my time done. And we went to a working men's club after that, and I actually did a speech, and I just talked about my injuries, and and I can't remember what I said, but I think it was tough.
Yeah,
it was tough.
Well, for what it's worth, Bud, I can say that every man and woman that were marching in that parade, a little bit of you was with them.
Yeah, definitely. And there wasn't one of them really that didn't come up to me at some point. And, and it's not about me, Joe. I don't want to, paint that picture, but there was not one of them that didn't come up to me and and we was back to normal, really. The banter was there. The jokes started coming in like, oh, he's harmless, and stuff like that. And
the non-PC stuff.
All that, and it was great, and because it's a family regiment, and it was good to see the boys and all the rest of it. So yeah, it was nice. But I think I did know then that was sort of the end of my time. You can go to parades and remembrance days and stuff, but I think that was time for me to move forward.
Yeah.
So I then went, I then officially got medically discharged, which was in 2014. It was actually a few years, almost 3 years after I was injured. I wasn't at the rehabilitation, as I say, but I then pursued a PT career. So I took a personal training intensive course. I was a nutrition advisor at that stage. So, and then I started, as I say, I got introduced to two golfing organisations, one called the On Course Foundation, and one called Battleback. So I started to play a lot of golf, and I started to compete, and I competed against the American counterparts, and I was in a position, I got the winning putt on the inaugural Simpson Cup.
Oh, well done.
Yeah,
you're still feeling a little bit competitive then, aren't you, really?
Oh yeah, and it was great because it was like I was back. I was back with like-minded people. John Simpson, the guy that founded the On Course Foundation, he used to manage, Nick Faldo and all the sporting greats. So he could open a lot of doors, and Battleback could open a lot of doors through Tristan Crew, who's one of the colonels. And so yeah, I was back in that place. I was with like-minded people, ex-squaddies. Obviously, everyone was injured, but I was competing again, and it was brilliant. I mean, yeah, getting that winning putt in so lucky as well. So lucky to have these opportunities. You know, there are people out there that get injured and lose limbs, and they're pushed to the wayside. And I was getting all this support, and I was receiving a pension, and doors were opening for me. And you know, I'm very lucky. I was very, very grateful for what I was doing. So I focused quite a lot on the golf, and I did a bit of TV work as well, a bit of background TV stuff. So,
right,
you know, things were good.
So just as well that your face wasn't damaged then, eh? You're getting a TV.
Yeah, although I did have a little part in one film, and it was basically that I'd been injured as a soldier, and they put all the blood on my arm and put it all on my face. And I remember lying there thinking, I don't know if this is good.
well, I was just about to say, I mean, thanks makeup department for taking me back there.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of compartmentalize and block, don't you, a little bit as soldiers, and I suppose men do it in particular. But I do remember lying there on the scene thinking, fucking hell, this is probably pretty much like deja vu. I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but yeah, it was fine. And I had a little part in a HBO series, just a very small part back in the day called Strike Back. So life was, you know. Then I went on a base camp Everest trek. So I pursued a trek to base camp Everest as well. So you know, I was doing my own charity events, running my own charity events, and raising money for the supporting charity organisations. So, you know, life was pretty good. I was doing a lot of stuff. I was keeping busy. The ego was getting boosted, rightly or wrongly. But truthfully, bringing it down a bit, you know, I was still suffering.
Yeah.
You know, I was putting on a face, which you do, and sometimes you have to do that. And we're all doing it to an extent, but you know, there were times when I was struggling because I didn't feel the worth that I felt back in the army. You know, I didn't feel that staff sergeant status. You know, yeah, I was doing a bit of TV work. Yes, I was a personal trainer. Yes, I was talking as well. I was doing some talking at high profile events, delivering my story and things.
Yeah.
But it wasn't really fulfilling me enough. And then I got wrapped up in a bit of money things, which is a long story. But the truth be known, I wasn't really fulfilled like I once was back in the army.
So, yeah, and like I suppose it's been removed from the reality that you enjoyed without your permission, and then everything's just taken away, and then you start to fill your desire, competitive edge with other things. When the door closes behind you at the end of the day, what happens then internally?
It's a tough pill to swallow, because like you say, it wasn't my choice. But even if it is your choice and you come to your end of your career, still there's nothing that can truly replicate a life in the military. And so yeah, I had many nights of drinking heavily and yeah, doing some silly things, really. You know, on the surface, everything looked great.
Yeah.
Inside, and again, you'll relate, and most people can relate. Inside, I'm thinking, I feel worthless. I don't know where my part is in life. But as I say, you know, you get on with it. You have to get on with these things. And so I just give myself a talking to, a bit of a slap, and when I have those days, you know, I just remind myself how lucky I am, and I just keep trying to pursue and opening new doors and getting on with things. Because you only have two choices, don't you? Really?
Yeah.
You only have two choices in life.
And I feel where you were, because I remember when I was lying in bed in Cardiff, trauma ward, and I'm paralysed, and I didn't know what had gone on really. You know, I knew that it didn't look good, And when the consultant came to me and said, "Look, we need to operate. You've broken your neck," I'm thinking, "All right, so that's why I can't move." I said, "Oh, by the way," and as he's walking off, because you have that shock and denial, don't you?
Yeah,
And I said, "Oh, by the way, I've got a marathon next week. Can you patch me up?" And he turned around, and he must have done all he could to hold back the snigger or the sadness or the tears, because he said, "I'm not sure you recognise the seriousness of what you've got. You won't be doing any marathon." And I thought, "Oh,
yeah, and that, you know, what do you do? What do you do at that point? What you know, what year was that?
99 October, yeah, October the 30th. Remember it well, yeah.
You remember it? Yeah, yeah. How do you, you know, no matter how tough you were, all the stuff you'd done, and you know, all your career and stuff like that. How do you deal with that?
Yeah. Well, you see, that's what brings me on, right? So you've hit the drink, you've hit other stuff hard, and you're having a crisis. So how? And I get it. Not every day is perfect, and we can still have our challenges, can't we?
Yeah.
The fact is, though, is how do you deal with failure? What do you do? What's that mechanism that just gets you going?
It's a good question. I think it's just going back to what's instilled in you. You know, as a soldier and as a person, like I could see myself going down a slippery slope quickly, and my health was deteriorating with the alcohol and other things, and I was isolating myself, and I just recognised that this is not healthy, and I go down this road. This is it for me, really. This is where I end up. So that grit and determination, that stubbornness, which is, you know, that I am stubborn, that grit and determination and resilience within me just kept telling myself that, you know, you got to, what I think the key thing to it all is you've got to recognize that it might not be perfect and it might not be great like it once was, but it can be great in its own right. And you have to take baby steps. That's the biggest thing for me. I was thinking about all these grandeur things, that I want to be this, I want to write a book, I want to be, you know, an actor, I want to be the best DJ, and I just don't think it's just too much. So I just started to tell myself, look, little bits at a time.
Yeah.
Get out of bed, make your bed like you always did in the army. Make your bed, have a shower, clean your teeth, have a bit of breakfast, get some exercise in. Even if you're in pain, even if you can't train like you once did, do something. And that was all I needed. And that's the way I try to do it, is I try to keep it simple and not overthink things. It doesn't always work, and I get wrapped up in my own head a little bit sometimes, but just keeping things simple and just one step at a time, and talk to people, you know, use your mates and keep interacting with people, because if you don't, you can quickly go down that path.
Which is great, because that brings me on to the next point, is what's the secret? And you're probably going to think, what do you mean? So what's the question? What's the secret of your success? Now, instead of just going into automatic mode of, I'm not successful yet. Well, yeah, you are, right? So what's the secret of your success?
I don't know what you mean. No, it's a good question.
And the reason I argued with myself presenting that question, so if you got lost, what I was thinking you might say, because I've got a pretty good handle on the type of person you are. You might have said, I'm not successful, Joe. And me, I think that I'd really like you to go inside and think about how successful you have been and what's the secret of it.
Yeah, I think we do play things down, don't we? Especially the squaddies, we tend to play things down. But I lost my train of thought there completely.
Take your time. It's okay. It's all right.
I mean, sorry, I've completely. I did have something I wanted to say, but obviously it wasn't of that importance. But it was to do with what is the secret. But I mean,
I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll go on to the
quite-
we'll go on to the next one, and then we'll come back because this will probably trigger it. Actually, what with your social network, right? And that's the lads going out on the lash, lads and girls going out on the lash, or the mates you've got now that might have changed, or your business network, people you know in business. How important is it to have a good network? Do you reckon, social and business?
I think it's vital. It's key, because without it, you just barely function. Because look, people sometimes think, oh, I can do everything myself, I don't need anyone. But the truth is, you do. You can't be a master of everything, and you need people around you. When times are not great, or you want a door opening but you can't do it yourself. I think we all know that humans are sociable animals. And I've had times when I've been a recluse, and the lockdown didn't help anyone, let's be honest. Yeah. And I've pulled back from things. And that's when I immediately noticed that mentally, not physically so much, but mentally, start to go downhill. So in order to achieve in life, I think you've got to be prepared to network and meet new people, and just be bold, be brave. I think we're all our own worst critics to an extent. When I'm in my own head and being my own worst critic all the time, that's just going to keep you in that safe place. But I think the key is just pushing out of that boundary a little bit, pushing those boundaries, pushing that comfortable barrier a bit further out will get you meeting new people, and it's building the relationships ultimately that will help you build your own successes, whether it be on a personal front or in business. I think building relationships, healthy relationships, and again, you need to know when they're not healthy. You need to know when people are not, surround yourself with good people. It's all these saying buzzwords, but it's quite true that, I've been there when I've had toxic people around me, toxic, another word, but I'm not going to say super laser focused. But when you've got people around you that are just not really serving you well, it sounds selfish, but you've got to kind of cut away. So you've got to recognize what's healthy and what's unhealthy in your life. And it's really easy. It's just about using your gut. It's just trusting your gut instinct. Everyone's got it. It's innate, built within you, but sometimes you lose it. So build networks, build healthy networks, but trust yourself. I think the biggest thing is trust yourself. Don't take on board everything that anybody says. There was a time when I was very, very naive and gullible, and I told you briefly, Joe, that I invested far and wide into some crazy things. Yeah. I was, compensated for my injuries, and I come across con artists and scammers, and I fell for it, and I put my hand up and I fell for it. I made those decisions, but my gut the whole time was sort of telling me, don't do it. And, trust your gut and surround yourself with those good people, and try not to be too hard on yourself, and push the boundaries a bit more. Each day, don't put too much pressure on yourself, but push them a little bit more. Short goals, medium goals, long-term goals, and I think you can't go wrong with that. I mean, we all know this, but putting it in practice, isn't it? Yeah. And just telling yourself.
Yeah, and that brings me nicely on to the next point, because I know how important do you think the good mentor and good coach is. And if I can put that into context, I think that from our discussion, you've had some great coaches and mentors, and you've actually been a great coach and mentor to people. And talking about recognizing toxic people and getting rid of them, and asking the people who are good influencers the right questions. I mean, that's what it's all about, isn't it? The coach and mentor.
Yeah, definitely. Going back to what I say, you don't know everything. And there's always going to be someone that you look up to. Growing up, I looked up to the likes of Michael Jordan and Mike Tyson in the sporting world, people like that. But, in the military, there was sergeants. When I was a trooper, I'd get there, and, Barney and Fred Reed, and people obviously you don't know, but people that I looked up to and aspired to be. And it's so important. You've got to have those people, and you've got to be willing to to approach these people if you can. Obviously, you can't approach the likes of Mike Tyson and Michael Jordan on a daily basis. But if there are people there that you think you can approach that can help you with something that you're not quite sure with, and they can enhance your life in some way, then just take the leap and do it. And don't be so stubborn that you feel that you can work it all out yourself. Use the people around you. But also, I will say as a caveat to that, and I can be sometimes glass half empty, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Don't confuse the situation. Don't turn YouTube on and look at 1,000 people telling you that, oh, I get up and I have warm lemon water and then I do this and life's great, when it probably isn't great, truthfully. Because everyone has struggles and everyone has difficult times. And those that don't, they're very lucky and they're wired a certain way, or they're lying to you. Yeah. So don't get mixed up with these. Influencers are great in the right way, but if they don't serve you well, or you innately, instinctively don't feel that they're telling the truth, then just push them aside. Select 1 or 2 key people in your life that you look up to, and approach them and use them as a mentor. Real people doing real things, as opposed to going on YouTube and listening to 100 people.
That's a great point, actually, because I was talking to my sons yesterday, and we were talking about the sorts of YouTube and social media now, and like, you can go and hire a Lamborghini for, I think, 800 quid for the day. Now, I suppose the person who does that as showy and photoshops everything and can say, this is my car. Well, I suppose it's stretching the truth, but if they were put in a corner and said, it's not your car, I said, well, it is for the day. So that's a great tip. And also, and thanks for sharing about your compensation and how sometimes you were sucked into stuff. If it's too good to be true, then it probably is. So you need, and that's where a mentor, a coach, like I regularly dealt giving financial advice to people, and I don't think it's about getting a mentor that will tell you what to do, is it? It's about a mentor that will challenge you.
Yeah.
Or a coach who'll challenge your decision.
Challenge and advise you, because, again, you're not necessarily making a bad decision, but having that mentor in place, like John Simpson, who I mentioned, who used to manage all the sports professionals, he was a classic example for me, but unfortunately I didn't ask him, because he would have straight away, some of these investments, he would have straight away said, leave it alone, don't go there, because it is too good to be true. One was definitely too good to be true, and it turned out it was too good to be true. But
I'm laughing there, sorry mate, I was just joining you in with your laughter.
Because I can look back on it. I mean, it created a lot of anger and shame and guilt and blah 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 inside me, but I've gone beyond that. I've moved beyond that now, but also I've learned immense lessons from it. So I needed to go down that road in order for, perhaps I can be at a place where I can advise, or I can speak to someone like yourself, and you can, through your experiences of your career, you can talk to me, or John Simpson. But even the mentors, like I've talked briefly about my brothers, but I look up to, growing up looking up to both my brothers. Even though we've had the times that have not been great, you still look up to them, and you can approach them, and you're proud of them in your own way and stuff. So I think it just keep it simple and search for someone that can help you in your workplace or around you personally.
So thank you for that. Coming back to the secret of your success, what would you put it down to?
Trying to squeeze it out of me, Joe, ain't you?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you use that terminology, because from what I recognise, having spoken to you a few times now, you do go for that squeeze, don't you? To squeeze every last drop.
Yeah, I do. I do put pressure on myself, and that's one thing I have to tell myself, and that's one thing I've tried to get across here, is try not to put immense pressure on yourself to achieve. But ultimately, it's always been in me to achieve. I'm competitive, and I want to I want to do well by myself, but I want to do well by other people as well. I want my successes to maybe translate into other people. I don't know how to really explain that. I want to help people. I want to help people along the way with my journey. So,
Yeah.
you know, on a daily basis, I like to think I can help people. You know, I try to help people find work or introduce them to key individuals, or if they want, if they want advice on an investment, for example, I know I'm connected to you now. I might be able to open that door. So, but but the successful thing, I don't know. It's a lots of things, isn't it? It's that it's built in you. I think I've always been driven. I've always been motivated. I want to do. You know, I've been brought up in a competitive environment with two older brothers, watching films like Rocky and stuff like that. So there's always been that drive there. And I've been surrounded by good people, some bad people at times as well, but good people. So I've learned from my peers and people who are above me. And I think that's just brought me on. But what is the secret? It's really hard to put it down to one thing. I mean, grit and determination, resilience. That's the thing. I think grit, determination, and resilience that we all have. We all have it in bucket loads. Sometimes we don't think we are. But we're all resilient just by being ill and recovering from illness is being resilient. And so I think that's one of the key things is that resilience and determination and drive to succeed in some way, shape or form, whether it be having more money in my bank or introducing someone to a business or connecting two businesses together. For me, that's success, and that makes me feel good, and hopefully it helps the people around me as well.
Thank you for that. And I know that you've been on the receiving end as a recruit, and then you were delivering mentoring coaching to people who were below you. So you've got this sort of parental streak to you where you just want to connect people and help. Now the fact is, you left the military, you've had the proverbial kicked out of you physically, right? And what it can't take away from you, right, is your determination, your desire to succeed, and your competitive edge. So even for the people you've commanded who may not have that, I mean, I'm sure you commanded some really determined men and women. There may be some that weren't as determined, perhaps. Even those people, how transferable do you think the skills are that they learn in the military that in Civvy Street really are useful?
Oh, I mean, it's like gold dust, isn't it? The skills, really, because, you know, as you say about these soldiers that might not feel that they're as motivated as others, we're all very different. So we're not exactly the same people, but even them getting ready for exercise, getting ready for operational tours, turning up on time, that's all organisation and determination. And I just think you can really, what's the word? Well, for want of a better word, you can really play down the skills that we have. But when it comes to it, I've sat in some meetings and I've been around some civilian organisations, and that, I'm not calling civilian organisations by any means. They work very hard. But you do not realise how many skills you have. And it is the core key skills that matter. Going back to what I said at the beginning, you know, having a smile on your face, turning up on time, being prepared to learn, being prepared to contribute in some way if you can, being motivated and enthusiastic, being polite, well-mannered, all those things that some civilians unfortunately struggle with and don't have innately in them. Most soldiers that I know anyway have all of those things. Respect for others, you know, discipline, as in being there on time, all those core values of the army. And I'm touching on the core values now, but oh man, you could they're transferable into the biggest companies in the world, really. That's not meaning that you can be the CEO of that biggest company in the world, but you can certainly be employed within that organization, because those key skills or core values, which we call them in the army, they are, like I say, gold dust.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for that. And finally,
Pleasure.
the Columbo question. What's the one tip, because we've covered so much, right? And I suppose to put it into one line or a paragraph is really difficult. What's the one tip you would give to someone who's leaving the army, or maybe has already left the army and feeling a bit on a downer and wants to know how to get on?
One tip is don't be hard on yourself, because I can guarantee that most of the stuff that's going in his or her head is possibly revolving around, I'm not good enough, but I'm not used to Civvy Street. I don't know what Civvy Street is, therefore I don't know if I can adapt to Civvy Street. Well, I can categorically tell you, if you've served more than a period of a few months in the military, you can easily adapt and apply yourself and contribute in many ways in Civvy Street. So whenever you get those little doubts in your head, that little talking voice that you can't, and again, I'm not going into the therapy side of things, but it's true. You just need to tell yourself that don't be hard on yourself. You know, that's the key thing for me. Don't be hard on yourself, and little baby steps. Don't look for the biggest thing. Just take one thing at a time. So don't be hard on yourself, and take each day as it comes, small steps, moving on from that.
That's absolutely.
That's any good?
That's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
And Paul, thank you so much for your time today. You've given so many words of wisdom to reflect on. That it's brilliant, and it's been a pleasure speaking to you.
Yeah, cheers, Joe. I really appreciate you having me on and everything you've said, and I hope it can help, and hope to speak to you again soon.
Cheers. I'm sure it can. Have a brilliant day.
Cheers. You too.
JoeTeams.com is a resource I have created to fulfill my mission to help 1 million veterans and business entrepreneurs like you achieve the goals, dreams, and aspirations they deserve. JoeTeams.com is jam-packed full of valuable resources specifically designed to help you on your journey to success. Visit JoeTeams.com now to find out how you can join and start your journey to success immediately. That's JoeTeams.com, JoeTeams, JoeTeams.com. And until we meet again, have a brilliant day.